Hello, and welcome to Bear Necessities. My name is Bear. Welcome back from the holidays and Happy New Year. Today I want to talk about a game that's been on my mind and taken up most of my gaming time for the last month, and that's Pantheon: Rise of the Fallen. I initially wanted to give a full review of the game and my experience over the last month, but there are tons of content creators out there who have done a great job at it. I'll put some links in the description to some of the initial reviews of the game, and if you want that sort of thing, you can check it out. My only general comments on the game are that it is in early access and it will be for upward of 2 years, so there's definitely polish needed to graphics, animations, and HUD design. There are obvious zone areas devoid of content that needs to be filled out, and there are plenty of quests and NPCs missing that need to be added. On top of that, there's full classes that haven't even been released yet, and mastery isn't even in the game. But the Visionary Realms team seems committed, and there have been a number of patches already, so I do have high hopes for the game. Alright, enough of my general feedback. Today I want to talk about what I think is the strongest aspect of Pantheon: Rise of the Fallen, and that's combat and class design. In general, every class has 18 buttons at the most. I love that this is simplistic, easy to make keybinds for, but it's enough buttons that you feel like you always have something to do. Also, every ability will specifically go to one of your 3 bars. I'm not sure how you tell, other than that it's just a surprise which bar the skill actually shows up on, so maybe that's something they can improve in the future. Also, every class has a number of abilities that don't cost any resource, so they are spammable abilities. They scale with stats, and they do some extra damage. And finally, a lot of classes have skills that create opening gap or exposure. Think of these similarly to heroic opportunities of EverQuest 2. Opening gap is put on by caster type classes, so mages and priests, and melee classes often have abilities to take advantage of opening gap. For example, on my rogue, I could use an ability that takes advantage of opening gap and reduce armor class, resistances, or damage output of the mob based on what weapon I was equipping in my primary. Similarly, casters can take advantage of the exposure ability to do things like slow the mob or debuff it in other ways. Second, I want to talk about learning abilities. Every class has scroll trainers. Trainers sell abilities that you will learn as you get levels. You can scribe these by right-clicking on them to learn them. Another way you can learn abilities is to just fight in the wild. As you're attacking things and your skills pass a certain threshold, say for example my crushing skill goes to 45, then you'll get a new ability. This happened just now to give me Soothing Waters, which is a no-cost ability with a heal over time. My rogue got certain abilities just by getting his Tricks of the Trade skill up, which rises from being in stealth and using stealth abilities. Alright, so let's move on from the basics and talk about some specific classes to give you an idea to why I like combat so much in this game. I'm going to start with the Shaman because that's the class I've played the most, and I think it's one of the simplest combat mechanics and is pretty traditional, but also has its own challenges. So the Shaman only has a few gauges to think about, of course your HP and your mana, and to the lesser extent vision. As you heal, your vision gauge goes up until eventually the eye is fully open. The higher vision you have, the faster cast speed you have, so keeping max vision is insane for cast speed. The only 2 gauges you have to worry about other than that are HP and mana, which is basic combat in a lot of MMOs. However, Shaman is a buff-heavy class, so one of your biggest constraints in combat is choosing your buffs. For example, Shamans can buff strength and stamina, dex, attack haste, sprint speed and endurance, but to have all of these, you need 4 ability slots. And whenever you remove those slots, the buff actually just drops off. So slotting your buffs correctly for the situation is absolutely necessary. The buff ability slots are also shared with your biggest heal, your poison cure, and your wolf pet, so you definitely have some decisions to make. Alright, so moving away from a more traditional class, let's talk about some other classes like Rogue. Rogue is interesting in that they have multiple gauges to think about. Of course they have HP like normal, but they also have readiness and opportunity. These resource gauges enable them to use their abilities and often make their abilities more effective. For example, traps, damage abilities, and temp buffs take opportunity, while other attacks take readiness. Going stealth makes your readiness and opportunity points regenerate, so staying stealth in between fights will max these gauges. You You also have abilities that will increase your opportunity and readiness, so planning your resource generation abilities and your resource spenders is a big part of combat. Other classes are very similar in this aspect. For example, Rangers have momentum and readiness, Dire Lords have essence and readiness, and Monks have chi and readiness. Wizards have to balance elemental types to ensure they don't blow themselves up, as well as balance their rune generation. And it goes on and on. Every class is unique in their own way. As you can see, a lot of classes have multiple resources and multiple ways to increase and spend those resources. This is my favorite part about Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. It screams for efficiency and optimization. How do I get the most damage out of the resources I have? How do I sequence my attacks in such a way to increase my resource generation? All of these questions make combat engaging and make damage and healing output way more complex than just pushing buttons. The final thing I want to talk about with combat is crowd control. Crowd control is pretty common if you play games like EverQuest 1 or Final Fantasy 11, but having classes like the Enchanter who can completely change the way you pull group encounters is awesome. Getting 2 to 3 in a pool usually means death in this game, but having a Chanter able to mez extra mobs is great and enables you to do more spicy pulls. I hope you enjoyed this video that generally discusses combat and Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. I've been thinking of doing more in-depth class guides for Pantheon, and if that's something you're interested in, please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.